Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Sabbath Fellowship. We are not meeting right now during the COVID-19 scare. We hope to meet again soon. I'd like to discuss the philosophy of signs and comets today. This is our next video, and kind of give you an idea of why we do these videos. I'm not a news guy. I mean, I do study the Bible and I do study the newspaper. I'm more trying to give you the philosophy behind the end times, okay? So what knowledge do you need to acquire? What is your reality? Such things like why were you born for such a time as this? And what's our existence during this time frame? Things like that. So I really want you to dig through those things. When you see these signs in the sky, or like the pink moon here that happened during Pesach, the full moon. Obviously, Pesach is on a full moon. And when you see the signs in the sky, you'll kind of have an understanding of why you were born for this time and what these signs mean, and more of the philosophy behind it. So right now we're comet crazy, so I want to explain what's going on and how I think that relates to the end times. So we'll see what my philosophizing does on this. Okay, now let's discuss signs one more time. Let's go back to Genesis 1:14 through 15. God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to divide the day from the night. Let them be for signs, otot, seasons, moedim." That would be like the festival of Pesach, of Passover, days, and for years. So those things have not ceased. So are these lights in the dome still there? Yes, absolutely. Do we still have eclipses? Yes. Is the sun still 400 times larger than the moon and 400 distances further away than the moon? So they appear to be exactly the same size when it comes time for the eclipse. Yes. So I put on the bottom here why I am a cessationist, and I'm not. This guy Thomas Schreiner is proud to say that, and so no, these signs have never ceased, and so in many cases, the guys that are cessationists are saying the signs ceased from mankind and also God's signs. So all of these things, so this Tom Horn guy here that writes the wormwood prophecy, and I'm saying 2029, what about 2020? What about 2021? And so he wants us to start pointing towards 2029, and that's 9 years from now, dude. Okay. So anyway, these signs I think are important. I think they're meaningful. God put them here for a reason, and I'm not a cessationist, and I hope that you are not either. And so this is from Luke 21. There will appear signs in the sun, the moon, the stars. Okay, that means during the end times, and on the earth, nations will be in perplexity, anxiety, and bewilderment at the sound and surge of the sea. That's the peoples in most cases, as people faint with fear at the prospect of what has overtaken the world. For the powers of heaven will be shaken, and they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with tremendous glory and power. Okay, so that means those signs didn't cease at all, guys, okay? And also I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy. So that means the gifts didn't cease either. So these guys on the right-hand side, this has got questions, and they're cessationists. And so they're saying the miracle or sign gifts are only mentioned in the earliest epistles of Paul. They're saying, like Corinthians, Ephesians, Romans, things like that. But what about Revelation? Obviously, these guys are so Pauline-centric that they have Google's goggles. I put down at the bottom Google's, but it's goggles. Sorry, I spelled it wrong. Maybe it spell checked me. Anyway, the point is that they don't believe in the gifts of the Spirit. They don't believe in these signs. They don't believe in any of this stuff. So whatever is supposed to occur during the end times, they're going to say, you're not seeing that. And I'm going to say, no, you're seeing that. And it matches up with Matthew 24 and with Revelation and other passages too. So if you're sitting out there and your spouse looks at you and says, marry me, and you see this plane flying by with marry me sign, he's got the puppy eyes looking at you, are you going to say, no, that's not a sign from God, or that's not a sign from my potential spouse, and walk away? No, obviously it was planned. And so the comets that are coming through right now, they're planned. And the eclipses of 1493, 1494, that was planned. That's when Columbus came back from the Americas. Israel's independence, 1949, 1950, that's when they won their independence. 1967, 68, that's when they conquered Jerusalem. And I don't know what occurred in 2014, 2015. I don't know if that's a 7-year sign. I don't know. I don't have to determine what all these signs mean. So on the right-hand side, all of these eclipses that have gone through, all of them are equidistant. They're beautiful. I don't care that there are 40 of these eclipses and that they're, happening, and 10 of them are, I don't know. I don't care, 40 signs, but 10 are eclipses and over 9 years, okay? I don't have to explain that. I just have to say, this is what I see. And I think the philosophy behind it is that we're getting into the end times. So I don't rationalize God. That's my philosophy. God is God. I'm a human being. I try to rationalize what I can, but these signs are not meaningless, people. Okay? The other thing is, if you look throughout history, the sword of the Spirit is the Word of God. You're not going to argue with that. And comets look like swords, and they're described as flaming swords or sky dragons and things like that. This is a book in the middle there. And so these are strange happenings. And so they look like swords. Look on the right-hand side. They look like swords to me. They remind us of judgment swords, and they've been described that way for 4,000 or 5,000 years. So, as always, I try not to twist the Bible. I try not to give you fake prophecy. I try to vet the prophecy first, and then I try to use the news properly and give you real news. This is what I call the philosophy of the end of days. First of all, we need to tackle this real quick. It's intriguing because there's a phrase in Romans 11 and a phrase in Genesis 48 about melo ha-goyim. That is the fullness of the Gentiles. So when you come to a time on Passover during that week when Jeffrey Grider said there were 7,777,777,777 on 4/16 of 2020. Well, that's interesting. That's like saying the fullness of the Gentiles. So that's also found in Luke 21 too. The main thing is it's interesting. But then Jeffrey goes way down the weird world, and yeah, here's the Romans 11 on this side, and here's Genesis 48:19, the cross-handed blessing from Yaakov to Manasseh and Ephraim, but then he says, oh, this is a great time for the pre-tribulation rapture of the church. The springtime, the Song of Solomon tells us the rapture will take place, and this is tops on the rapture ready index, which is not biblical. And I'm not predicting the rapture. No, I'm date teasing you. But it's my perfect choice. So what does that mean? There's no philosophy behind that. That's date teasing. That's fear mongering. That's crazy talk. Now, I will admit that these verses are very interesting. When you look at Romans 11:25, not until the Israel will be hardened until the fullness of the Gentiles, and Genesis 48:19. I mean, Paul was amazing in terms of figuring out that that's what that related to. That the cross-handed blessing meant that Ephraim would be greater than his brother Manasseh. And then it would be a melo ha-goyim situation. Fullness of the melo is fullness, and ha-goyim is the Gentiles. So it's just interesting, but you can't do this. You can't say rapture time based on 777, whatever. Okay. And so once again, I'll just show you one more time, melo ha-goyim. So then Jeffrey Grider on the other side is saying, 7 churches, and 7 spirits, and 7 golden candlesticks, and 7 stars, and 7 lamps, and so many sevens in Revelation. So this must mean that this is the time for the rapture. No, that's not how it works. I want you to understand that my job is to give you information so that you can settle down and patiently watch things happen. This is a marathon, people. This is not a sprint. So get used to the slow pace of this. You're sitting in your houses right now, you're watching videos all over the place, and you're trying to learn a few things. What I want you to understand is that this is going to be like watching paint dry. It's going to be that slow. It's going to take years, and things are going to happen, and you're going to wonder, did Kim Jong-il die over the weekend here? I don't know. But it's going to be slow, and it's going to take time to vet it. And this process of the mark of the beast, we don't even know what it is yet, and we don't know when it's coming. It's going to be very, very slow. And then when things happen, they're going to happen fast. So here's what's happening right now. So Comet Atlas is a comet that I've been monitoring for a couple of months now. It's green, based on C2, and that's burning up in the sky. And so it has been getting brighter and brighter, but now it's breaking up. Well, that's fine because it's broken up into 4 pieces. And this is interesting. This is from Hertfordshire Allotment Life. So it's a life insurance company, and I'm doing comet news on YouTube, but Atlas, the 4 riders of the apocalypse. That actually works great. If it would have broken into 2 pieces or 10 pieces, that'd be different. That's 4. Now, I won't say the 4 riders of the apocalypse, but it's the 4 plagues of the 4th seal, possibly. So let's look again. So once again, here's the 4 pieces, and here's the update. So once again, 4th seal, 4 plagues, 4 comets. Just interesting. And Comet Atlas continues to be much brighter than expected. It could get absurd in terms of how bright it gets. Even with 4 pieces, it's getting very, very bright. And so just be aware that as we get into May, it could be very, very bright and could be a sign. And it's not the only comet out there. So once again, there are 4 pieces of the 4th seal. There's this Ramphea sword, which is, I'll cite the verses later on. So anyway, the main thing, that is a judgment comet, generally over the years, killing people, and drought. It's Limo in the Bible, and so that is drought on the lower right-hand corner. Then Thanatos is death, and then COVID-19 is one portion of it. It's like a precursor. It's like something that will happen now, but then 2020, 21, maybe later on this year, it could get worse. It really could. So that's biological warfare or possible animal attacks. In the Old Testament, it was always animal attacks. So those are the big 4, and that should kill 1.944444444 deaths. Okay, and that's the exact number there, which is interesting. Obviously, we'll have more numbers by that time, but based on the 7 number that was given to us in terms of how many billions of people are on the planet right now. So what else is happening that's intriguing? 4 comets, including Atlas, are in the sky. So this is Atlas, the first one. Then this is Swan, C2020 F8, and that's Comet Swan, and that's around there and bright and green again, okay? And so if Atlas kind of dies out on us or disintegrates, Swan will be there, okay? Then we have PANSTARRS that's holding steady. It's always been there, you know, number 3. And then number 4 is the other Atlas that's been around, and it's another steady comet that's been there for a while. So once again, Atlas is 4 comets, and there are 4 comets total in the sky. That is, and many of them are green, so keep in mind, that's like a sign of the 4th seal. It just is. So it works. Are comets harbingers of disaster based on history? Well, the Roman prophecies, the Sibylline oracles, those are not godly. Keep them in mind. They're part of the pseudepigrapha. Spoke of a great conflagration from the sky falling to the earth, while most ancient known mythology, the Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh, described fire, brimstone, flood with the arrival of a comet. Rabbi Moses ben Nachman, a Jew living in Spain, wrote of God taking 2 stars from the Kema and throwing them at the earth in order to begin the great flood. Yakut legend in the ancient Mongolia called comets the daughter of the devil. So comets have been important over the years, and this is from a source, I can't remember, Stefan Stanford, I think Lisa Haven, not Lisa, no, I'm going to blank on her name. Susan Duclos started this site up years ago, and I think she's sickly right now, so Stefan is writing for her. So anyway, they have been listed, and this is one source of those things. And then I want to go back through history. Mark Biltz brought this up, and it's just interesting. This is about Nineveh, Assyria, and the time of Jonah. And let's go through in Revelation 17 and 18, especially 17, we see the 7 historical kingdoms. Egypt is number 1, Assyria is number 2, Babylon's number 3, Medo-Persia is number 4, Greece is number 5, Roman Empire is number 6, and then the revived Roman Empire is number 7. And they also, 4 of those match up with the figurine of Daniel 2 and the animals of Daniel 7. And I'll get into that video again some other time. But the interesting thing is that during the time of of Assyrian times, when their kings were powerful, they had a plague come through in 765 when King Sargon II was born, then civil war, then the plague, and Jonah arrived on Elul 1, 763, according to Mark Biltz, and then there was a total eclipse, and then they had 40 days to repent, and they did repent in this case. Now, would anybody else repent? No, nobody believes in these signs anymore. So if we had a plague, like COVID-19, and a civil war, and then we had a plague, and then a total solar eclipse, would anybody repent? I doubt it. But it's interesting that they did. And keep in mind that Assyria at this point in time was wicked as wicked could be. So this is the Bible talking about it here. And so this is from Isaiah 37. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah, and Isaiah said unto them, Thus shall ye say unto your master, Thus saith the Lord, Be not angry or afraid of the words that thou hast heard, wherewith the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. And he did, yeah. Behold, I will put a spirit in him. He shall hear a rumor, and he shall return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the Ramphea. That's like a comet sword to his own land. And it came to pass that the angel of the Lord went forth and smote the camp of the Assyrians 185,000, so 185,000. And when men arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. And Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed, and he went and returned and dwelt in Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping at the house of Nisroch, his god, and Admiralek, Melech is king, so Kig Adram, and Sarazer, his son, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Azarat, and Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. So that's Isaiah 37, and that's about 681 BC. So there's the bull from 693 BC, and where he worshipped and things like that. So that's his god, so to speak. And so this famous king ruled from 740 BC until 681. And then you can see when he died, you can see the text about that. We just read that. And then he's the son of Sargon II, born in 765 under these signs. So daddy, I don't think Sargon was his father, but Sargon would have told him about the signs because they occurred 20 years before he was born. And he reigned as the king of Assyria from 722 to 705, and then the king of Babylon. So Medo-Persia, or rather Assyria and Babylon kind of merged up during that time frame. It's just biblical history that these signs occurred and that they repented. Just keep it in mind. It's just interesting. So the scene from the Bayeux tapestry showing men staring at Halley's Comet, 1066, and this is the first known picture of this comet. And so you know what happened. The Normans invaded in 1066. That was an important time of history, and you had Halley's Comet come through, and this is from Gizmodo. So more from them in terms of pictures. This is 1007. This comet gave off fires and flames in every direction, and it's just interesting. That's 1007. That's how they described the comet. That's how they portrayed it to us. Look at the one on the right, how beautiful it is, and so quite visible, obviously. In 1300, terrible comet appeared on St. Andrew's Day. The earthquake shook the ground, so many buildings collapsed. So that's from the Book of Miracles. It's just interesting to see how they describe them historically. They know that they were associated with horrible events. Here's another one, 1401, was followed by a great, terrible plague in Swabia. Okay, interesting. The comet of 1456 was seen in Germany from the Book of Miracles. So that was 1401 and 1456. Then we go to the En-Shishayim meteorite on November 7th, and nothing really happened as a result of that. Then the next one is 1514. It was another comet there, and these are more wood carvings, so they're really more difficult to understand. This one's the cool one. I wanted you to see this. So 1517, I believe, was the Jubilee year. It launched the 400-year conquering of Jerusalem by not the Moors, but the Ottomans. And so it's just interesting that it looked like a sword, it danced like a sword, and the comet's head like a bent arm, as if it had a sword in its hand and wanted to strike. And at the point of the sword, there were 3 big stars, and from the stars sprang a cloud-colored stream, which was longer than the comet's tail. And so it's just interesting. This is how they showed this particular comet of 1527, not 1517, but it's just interesting. It was 10 years after that Jubilee year that was, Martin Luther with the 95 Theses, and as I mentioned, the Ottomans and things like that. So it's an interesting time in history. Very, very huge time. Montezuma watched the comet come, and then after that, plagues came and killed the people. Now, you can claim that Columbus was roaming around and bringing illnesses and things like that. And also, that on 2/29 of 1504, on leap year, Columbus persuaded the Jamaicans that God was angry over them withholding supplies from him, and that he would show his anger via a lunar eclipse. And it happened, and they gave him his food and sent him on his way. So this is the Aztec civilization in 1519, which is a few years later. And so that sign, they knew it meant something, and it meant death and illness. And so it killed many Native Americans, or Native, in this case, Aztecians. So they just associated plague and disease with the comet. Here's another one in 1531. And beautiful, beautiful comet. Here's another one in 1547. Nothing associated with them, but this one looks like a sword, and that was from 1560, and then 1577 is associated with war in 1581, And then here's the one that killed Pegasus the horse in 1665, 1685, another beautiful set of comets. And then, let's see, 1704 on Christmas Day, 1744, just beautiful. A series of six-tailed comets. Wow, beautiful. Here is something from 1811, which is very interesting. So we have the Great Comet of 1811, and then in 1811 and 1812, we have the Napoleonic Wars, and we also have the New Madrid earthquake. So it's just interesting to note that there was a comet that foretold of those things. And if you lived in Europe, Napoleon was a big thing at that point in time. So this was as big and bright as it got to be until Comet Hale-Bopp shattered the record in 1997. So just be aware of that. And so here's the earthquakes in 1811, 1812. They tolled bells in Boston. These earthquakes were so huge. 3 earthquakes in 1811, 1812. Late in 1811 and early in 1812, but there they are. Okay, so just keep that in mind, that comets and earthquakes and natural disasters and plagues and other things like that are associated with the comet activity, with solar activity. Now, we're going to get into the Bible again and talk about the gods associated with comets. So I'm going to be reading Hebrew. So sacrifices and offerings did you offer me in the wilderness 40 years, house of Israel, as you carried Sekuth, whoever that guy is, your king, and Kun, your idols, the star of your gods. So that's Kokev, and Kokav in this case, of your gods which you made. Now, some guys have argued that Sekuth is a god, and Melechem is a king. Kun would be a god potentially, and then Kokev could be a god. Some people argue it that way. So but then of your gods, Elohim, which you made yourselves. Therefore, I will send you into captivity, you beyond Damascus. Oh, I was hoping that captivity is very close to the captivity word that's used in Leviticus 13 and also Isaiah 26. Very interesting. Isaiah 26, the time go into enter your rooms and captivity. It's close. It's real close. And then so anyway, this is Amos 5. And it talks, there aren't many passages. There's also Balaam's prophecy, I think the fourth one, talks about the star and the scepter out of Yaakov. But I don't think that one matches as well as this one, because this is gods and stars and things like that. So this is an article, and let's see, it's from Korah, and he said that God had foreseen that man would sin, and that his crimes reaching their consummation would demand a terrible punishment. Consequently, he had prepared from the moment of creation a comet which would be the instrument of his vengeance. Okay, interesting. And so according to different texts that we have, there are Rephaim, which are these giants, okay? And they're associated with comets and stars. They just are. And so I'm on the bottom here, but ye have borne the tabernacle of your king, and the type or form of your images, the star of your God. Now, they're associated with the Star of David. I'm sorry that they do so, but that's just their opinion. And so they're really associated, Remphan or Rephaim, as being related to Kun, this god listed from Amos 5, and it signifies the same deity and the same star. And the star of the Israelites is similar. This guy's citing it. There's Moloch off to the left-hand side, and you'd put your baby into the fires there, and they would beat the drums loudly to cover up the cries of your babies as you slaughter your child. So they're associating Moloch with Kun, the star god, Kokev. Interesting. Very interesting. This is another association with Saturn and with a perverse pagan star. So let's assume this. Because I'm very Hebrew friendly, that the six-pointed star of David is a good star, but also that the Satanists would use it. It's like the five-pointed star. There's nothing really wrong with it until you invert it, and then you know it's satanic. So let's pretend that the six-pointed star can be good too. And so it has been used for the kingship of David, and also the talisman of Saturn. And so also of these gods, we'll call them Rempha and Rephaim and things like that. And Saturn is associated with this. As well as Satan. And so the names Moloch, Kun, Remphan, the star god Saturn, Saturn was the supreme god of the Chaldeans. And so this was kind of well known. This is from a man named Robert Pollack from Quora. So you're saying, so what? The comets are busy right now. Well, what you don't know is that our magnetosphere is thinning. And so these holes up there, as reported here, these ozone holes are developing over the Arctic region, and especially down in the southern hemisphere. They're very, very large right now. And so, yeah, that lets through UV, no doubt about it, but it also can let through debris from comets. So if the comets break up and they happen to hit this area, they can come through much easier because you just don't have a magnetosphere that can protect you as well. The Van Allen belts are not as tough as they used to be, and so things are thinning up there, people. They thinned 10% from 1880 to 2000, and then another 5% from 2000 to 2010, and they're thinning, I think, at 10–15% more than we expected now. So just keep that in mind. Things are thinning, and the comets' debris can come through. And also, there's one other factor with this. Comets can cause lunacy in weak-minded people, and so the priests and other people are mentioning that depression and oppression are everywhere right now. If you look around the world right now with all the people bottled up in their homes, people are depressed. They're drinking more, they're fighting more, the divorces are starting to happen. We're getting sick and tired of the Hollywood people preaching at us. So just be aware that things are satanic in some ways, and it can be related to the moon, Luna, but it can also be related to comets. They are associated with it too. So according to this guy, comets are associated with zombie behavior, that it can cause strange things with at least the coronavirus and other things. So basically what I'm getting at is comets cause plagues. Plagues cause brain function to be altered, and if it destroys your brain tissue, you're going to have a rabid-like behavior. And so viruses, this is from Natural News, it can cause strange effects in people. As always, I go through my little chart here. I believe that we're entering into the fourth seal. We're seeing the first sign of it with COVID-19. It is not the final sign because we need to have many more people die if we're actually in the fourth seal. But the green comets are very interesting, and they match up with the fourth seal. Then at some point in time, we'll go into the trumpets, which are opened by the seventh seal, and then we would go through the trumpets, and then we would go into the bowls at the last half, the last 3.5 years, the Great Tribulation. If you had three woes together with the 7 bowls, the 3 woes are the final 7 trumpets, final 3 of the 7 trumpets, you'd get 10. And so just be aware that this is a standard timeline of how I believe things are going to happen. We'll see. If I'm wrong, I will apologize. One other interesting trend as we're ending up this video is 1620 plus 400 years gets you to 2020. So it's just interesting that we've put 400 years in. 400 is important. Genesis 15:13 talks about 400 years. God was talking to Abram, and your descendants will be strangers in the land for 400 years. Your descendants will sojourn in the foreign land for 400 years. So just be intrigued with the fact that it's been 400 years since 1620. And we seem to be coming to a time of culmination. I believe we've gone through Seal 1, Seal 2, Seal 3. These are the birth pangs. I believe that most people don't believe that we're entering into the birth pangs, or maybe they'll believe that, but we are not in the Great Tribulation yet. We're not even in tribulation. We're just going through the birth pangs right now. And so this is Steve Quayle and Tom Horn, 2 guys that are lecturers on this, and they claim people wouldn't accept. Even when it does start, they wouldn't accept that it would occur. And then Seal 4 will happen at some point in time. I look at 2021 as an interesting year to start that. Then Seal 5 would happen, and Seal 6. So that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for your time, and be blessed, and stay safe.